Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies recorded in the late after work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Madeline.
I'm Emilio.
And I'm Julian. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies are what keep us together, talking at the end of the night. So we've created some order to this ongoing trend by recording these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 unique guidelines for engagement.
You can email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. Seriously, we would absolutely love to hear from any one of you out there. You can follow us on Instagram and on TikTok for updates, highlights, clips, and other visual supplements to the audio that we record. You can find us there at Sleepless Cinematic Pod, all one word.
And in addition to these main episodes, we also record and release bonus one-off episodes as we see fit. While we do this, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love, foregoing sleep for a discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we finish out our current cycle of movies featuring musicians turned actors with a category we call Close Up, a deeper dive into the career of a professional in the movie business. We'll likely focus on some lesser-known figures like character actors or writer-directors and discuss at least 3 of their representative works and the characteristics that exist throughout.
And the character actor that we're going to take a look at today is none other than the boozy troubadour, Tom Waits. Who, yes, is a musician turned actor. And we're going to take a look at 3 of the films, 3 representative films that he's in. The first of which will be 1986's Down by Law, which is directed by Jim Jarmusch. We'll also be looking at 1992's Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola. And we'll also take a look at the Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which is an Coen brothers film that was released, 6-7 years ago? I can't remember the exact date.
2018.
Thank you, guys.
So 7 years ago.
Beautiful. 2018. We're going to take a look at all of those.
And joining us today is my dad, back for his second close-up. First person to return for a second close-up. So thank you. Welcome, my dad, Richard.
Woo!
Thank you. I didn't know I was the first to return. That's kind of cool.
As a close-up, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I love it.
I think it should be said as we usher ourselves into this conversation, too, that you are properly dressed for the occasion as well, wearing a Tom Waits shirt.
Yes.
Tom Waits, and you're wearing a Tom Waits hat.
Yeah, I'm wearing a fedora.
And you're wearing a Nick Cave shirt, which I feel like, they're kind of spiritual, 2 sides of the same coin in a lot of ways.
That's true.
Yeah.
Vibe.
I would say Madeline is also rocking a Tom Waits appropriate attire.
I have There Is a House in New Orleans shirt.
Very cool. My understanding, Richard, is that you have had a fairly long love affair with Tom Waits.
Yes, of course. Let's make sure everyone knows that's musical love affair.
Yes.
I've never actually met the man. And I was trying to think how long, and I can't even remember. It doesn't go back to me being a teenager, because that would have been the early 70s. But it's been a while.
Yeah, so, I think you've been a Tom Waits fan as long as I can remember. For sure. You've had this T-shirt for a long time.
Yeah, forever. And you've bought me several of the CDs I have, Tom Waits CDs like Glitter and Dome. And I think you bought me Orphans also, which is a great 3 CD set.
Yeah. So I think that was definitely my first exposure to Tom Waits, is that my dad's a huge fan of Tom Waits. I feel like working here at a music school, I talk to a lot of people about their taste in music. And so many people are like, oh, I grew up on like classic rock and I love Led Zeppelin because my dad loved Led Zeppelin. And I'm like, well, my dad is not like a Led Zeppelin dad. My dad is a Tom Waits dad.
My folks are like Bob Seger fans and Chicago Earth, Wind, and Fire fans. If you had to whittle it down to something. And for that reason, I was never exposed to Tom Waits through a parental figure. I can tell you right now, and this is no shade on my parents, my folks would absolutely not get Tom Waits.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite apparent here that even though we have varying degrees of maybe familiarity, that we're all appreciators of Tom Waits. I certainly count myself among that category. I've been a fan. I think as long as I've known about Tom Waits, I've always appreciated him. In fact, actually, my first exposure to him was appropriately in a movie. It was not one of the movies that we're covering for this episode, but it was a Terry Gilliam film called The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus.
Right. You
Right.
had pitched this pretty strong as a potential inclusion in this episode.
Yeah, and it's
That's one I haven't seen.
that movie. It's Terry Gilliam, so it's going to be pretty eclectic as a given. But and that was also, I think, maybe best known as being the film that featured the final on-screen performance of Heath Ledger.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And to compensate for him not being there to finish the production, that role went between a few different actors. I think it was Heath Ledger, Johnny Depp, Jude Law, and Colin Farrell.
What a
Holy
combo.
cow.
Yeah, they all played Dr. Parnassus.
Now I'm wishing we might have included it.
You should have
this
said
episode.
that during the discussion.
But Tom Waits plays a character in that named Mr. Nick, who is that's just an alias for the fact that he is the devil. I don't quite remember how much screen time Tom Waits had in that movie, but that came out in 2009. I was 12 at the time. And I think watching him for the first time on screen, I was a little, in a good way, confused, because I was thinking, like, is that Ron Perlman?
Yes.
Or like,
Yeah.
is that
I see the similarity. I never
Definitely.
thought about that.
Definitely.
like Ron Perlman, or like, is that Nick Nolte? And I was
Okay.
like, it was neither of them. And then I think, like, watching, because I watched that movie with my parents, they were telling me, like, that's Tom Waits. He's a really interesting musician. And ever since then, he's been on my radar in varying capacities. But I really did began the deep dive into his music around 7 years ago. I always knew I was going to like his stuff, but I started going through his albums chronologically in 2018 or 19. And it was contemporary with me getting into a lot of other, even though Tom Waits is a totally singular talent, a lot of other singer-songwriters of his generation. So people like Leonard Cohen or Warren Zevon, Joni Mitchell, people like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I have a robust knowledge of his discography up through around like the Bone Machine album.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the later things I either don't know well or could know better. But yeah, I've always been a fan. I think there's no one else quite like him in music or in movies.
Well, it's
And-
interesting you mentioned Bone Machine, because he recorded that during the making of Dracula,
Yeah.
and you can see some connections there. I think it really influenced his performance, but also I'm sure working on Dracula influenced the album also.
Yeah. I kind of figured, because they're so close together in time, that must be true. And that makes me think of a few episodes ago, we talked about The Man Who Fell to Earth.
I was just about to say that if
Yeah.
no one else would. Yeah.
And that movie, I think it came before David Bowie recorded Station to Station and Low, but that there was some cross-pollination
Yeah.
of the content of that movie and those albums. But also, like, relevant to that episode, because in that episode we talked about movies, The Man Who Fell to Earth being one of them, that you kind of don't get the first time, but there's something interesting going on there. And I like musically, I would say the very same thing about a lot of Tom Waits albums.
I was
that's
just going to say
true.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, like, if you go chronologically, I think the first one I'd really say that is true about is Swordfish Trombones.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of the
Yeah.
beginning of him really embracing like more experimental
Yeah.
instruments and instrumentation. So I would have to say that my first exposure with Tom Waits was seeing, and this is going to sound so bizarre, but seeing commercials on TV that were advertisements for the Mule Variations.
I'm very glad that you're
Oh,
bringing up
wow.
commercials. I'll let you continue what you're saying, and then I want to say something else about commercials.
Yeah. I just have in my memory like seeing a kind of impressionistic thing of him on a hill and some of the kind of electro swampy sound from that record. And I remember I was like, who is this guy? This is kind of
Yeah.
nuts. But it clearly stuck in my brain
Totally.
because I have a very vivid memory for whatever reason of that album and that advertisement for that album. I gotta say though, I think I only knew the album Rain Dogs for
Yeah.
the longest time. And that was in part because I will freely admit, like, I'm probably the one on this call at this table who is it has taken me a while, I think, to at least make space for an appreciation for Tom Waits. He's not somebody who I think I naturally would gravitate to, and there's even some elements of him as a musician that I think actually kind of frustrate me. But I don't mean to say that like everyone
I think
can
he would
have their joy.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I think everyone can have their joy with his music, and I would say too, like I don't think his music is really for everybody. I think like it's a real funky mix of things. And I noticed this time around in the deep dive, I think the one thing that unites him is a pretty conventional understanding of meter.
Yeah.
I think that is the thing that I've noticed across, from what I hear, he's very good at like packaging words and lyrics in a way that is actually rather conventional, I think. And so that was what my ear was really drawn to this time. But yeah, that's my exposure with Tom Waits.
Well, you were talking about commercials, and this is, kind of a pivot, but Dougie really wanted me to mention the fact that Tom Waits did a voiceover for a dog food commercial in the early 80s.
No way.
And you can look up this commercial. We should post it on our Instagram.
Oh, let's do it.
Because it's definitely something. I mean, you immediately recognize the voice.
Okay.
It's for Butcher's Blend Dog Food, and this was in 1981, and he talks about this in a biography, Low Side of the Road, A Life of Tom Waits by Barney Hoskins. So yeah, check out our Instagram for this Tom Waits dog food commercial.
Yeah, I can.
He also sued a company for stealing one of his songs. I can't remember the company, but they stole the song "Step Right Up," which is a kind of a spoken word thing.
Yeah.
And they had approached him about using it, and he'd said no. And so they
said,
hired a
"Too
musician and said, we want something that sounds sort of like this.
Oh, yeah,
And the
classic.
guy wrote them something, but then they said, why don't you also record us your own version of Step Right Up, and we won't use it.
Oh.
And then they used it anyway.
Yeah.
Wow.
Waits sued him, and it took a couple years, but he wound up getting something like $2 million out of him.
Yeah.
Well,
They
The
stole
lawyers
song.
got busy.
I used to listen to a jazz show that came out of San Francisco, and every Christmas, the DJ played that song as one of the Christmas songs because of the commercialization of Christmas. And I thought that was just hilarious that he would use Tom Waits' Step Right Up as a Christmas song.
Speaking of DJs, what's our first movie?
That's a great segue here.
Thank you.
Yeah, the first movie that we're going to be discussing, that will be Down by Law. I should say, too, that while both of these film titles refer to the prison system and have words to indicate relative position, we should not confuse Down by Law with Above the Law, which is the 1988 film starring Steven Seagal, directed by Andrew Davis, who directed The Fugitive and Under Siege. And it also takes place in Chicago. But yes, don't confuse Above the Law with Down by Law.
That is true. And although we'll be discussing a Coen Brothers movie later in this very episode, this movie is not to be confused with Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Another film about three escaped convicts on the run.
Yes, with more of a an aura of Homer's Odyssey than Down by Law. But there was actually one particular image in Down by Law when they have escaped from prison, spoiler alert, that when I thought like, oh, this, like don't confuse this with Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah.
And also don't confuse Down by Law with Bring Them Down.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a movie that I think came out in the world last year, but in the US it came out earlier this year, 2025. It's a thriller set in rural Ireland starring Christopher Abbott and Barry Keoghan.
Yeah.
Overlooked movie. I saw it in a theater. I thought it was good, but it's one of those things that came and went very quickly. I think, it doesn't maybe have the whiz bang factor that a lot of other things with those two actors do. But check it out. I think it's streaming on Mubi right now. Interesting movie.
Yeah. Just don't confuse it with Down by Law.
I do confuse this movie sometimes with Sweet and Low Down.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Down by Law, Sweet and Low Down. Which one was Waits? And also Down and Out in Beverly Hills.
Richard Dreyfuss.
That's another one that kind of sprang to mind.
Yeah. I would also say to not confuse this film with the movie Life, which is the Eddie Murphy, Martin Lawrence film, where these two men are framed for murder and they end up in prison with life sentences. Both of these films take place in the South. They may or may not also deal with attempts to break out of prison. Have you guys seen Life?
I have not.
No.
It's really good. It's like one of those movies that I saw, I think when I was a little too young, and then I saw again about 10 years ago. super worth it. Very good. Bernie Mac is also in it. And anytime I get to see Bernie Mac in a movie, I am like, take all my money. Don't confuse Life with Down by Law.
And that's Life, not the Alien movie Life.
That's correct. Yeah. Yes. Don't confuse Life with the newer Alien Life.
Yeah. And also don't confuse Down by Law with the Tom Waits song, I Wish I Was in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, which is from the Small Change album, which is the same one that Step Right Up is on. And there's quite a few moments in this film where, well, that prison I think may be in New Orleans, but I think still there's a lot of reason for Tom Waits' character, Zack, to say that.
Yeah.
Totally. So, Emilio, what is this movie about?
Great question, Madeline. It's New Orleans in the 1980s, I'm guessing, and we are introduced to two night owl types. There's Jack, who's currently working as a pimp, though he seems to have a considerable disconnect with the women that he represents. And then there's Zack, a radio DJ who has recently found himself out of a job. And neither of them are doing a pretty good job with the ladies at the moment. I will say the nighttime is not the right time for these two men because both Jack and Zack find themselves framed for crimes. Jack for soliciting a minor and Zack for driving a hot car with a corpse in the trunk. Both end up as cellmates in a New Orleans prison, and neither of them get along well with one another, at least at first. This all changes when they receive a third bunkmate, an Italian man named Roberto who goes by Bob. He has recently been picked up for murder and happens to be someone who Zack had a chance encounter with. Buzz off. Bob's whimsical nature and his eye for weaknesses in the prison security unites the three of them and puts them on a journey through Louisiana's backwoods and swamps, where uncertain but fresh starts await for all of them.
Excellent.
Yeah, well said.
Good job.
Thank you.
So had you guys, Emilio and Julian, had you guys seen this before?
I had, yes.
You had, yes.
I had seen it actually in the midst of my initial deep dive into the Tom Waits discography, so around 6 years ago. I loved it then. I still love it now. I think this is an awesome movie.
I really enjoyed this one.
And in the Jim Jarmusch filmography, I really, really like his movies, but I have not seen enough. I've seen just 4 of them. And the funny thing is that I think I've seen, this has been true for years now, I've seen 2 of his most recent movies, Patterson and The Dead Don't Die, and then 2 of his oldest movies, Stranger Than Paradise and this. But all of them, I think, are great representations of his greater work, and I really enjoy all of them.
Cool. Emilio, how about you?
This movie has an interesting distinction for me. I think this is the very first time I put a Criterion DVD in a DVD player and watched it. I got this from the library, I think when I was like 15, and I didn't know very much about it. I will say this, I think the big draw for me in this movie was Roberto Benigni because he had recently won an Oscar for Life is Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I remember putting it on and I remember thinking it was really fun and kind of weird. I had not seen it since, but I'll say another thing, which is the very beginning of this movie. So the cold open before there are any credits absolutely mesmerized me.
It's incredible.
I thought it was so cool. And this is the other thing that happened. So listeners who've listened to this podcast will know that I went to film school. I studied film in college. And when I was in high school, I made a documentary about video stores in the Chicagoland area and interviewed like 15 different video store owners to have them share what it was like to own independent video stores and kind of the arc from like the late 70s into the kind of mid 2000s when they were dying off. And for the opening of my documentary, I totally ripped off Down by Law and drove in a car and just drove past slowly through pretty much every establishment whose owner I spoke to. That was the opening credits.
Steal from the best.
There we go. Yep. So this movie, I would say for those 2 reasons, first Criterion and something that I absolutely ripped off shamelessly, has a little special place in my life. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I kind of love that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. The beginning is so mesmerizing. It also, I mean, Jarmusch and John Waters are coming up at similar times, and they have these very, I think, they have some similarities in their styles of just this completely like self-funded kind of almost guerrilla filmmaking. And I think that beginning also feels akin to stuff that the way that John Waters shot Baltimore a lot of the time.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I like that comparison.
I like watching that beginning to try to identify places I know.
I was
Since,
wondering
spent
if
so
you
much time in New Orleans.
noticed
Yeah.
anything.
And there's some things like you saw some housing projects.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's the Lafitte, which has since been torn down. A lot of New Orleans has gone through some gentrification, so a lot of those neighborhoods don't look that same way. Others are just exactly the way they were then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that, Richard, about looking for places that you could recognize, because that was actually, it was a conscious intention of Jim Jarmusch in scouting locations for the film to not use well-known locations in New
Mhm.
Orleans. That he actually, there's this really interesting feature on the Criterion DVD, the initial release from around 2002, where it's basically a commentary from Jim Jarmusch, but it is not synchronized with the visuals of the movie. It is purely audio.
Yep.
But he was talking about how he thinks like the real heart and soul of the city, of any city really, is not in the sites that everyone goes to see, but in the details in
Mhm.
between.
Mhm.
And that Jim Jarmusch had this fascination with New Orleans, that he didn't grow up there. He was coming from New York, but that he still found the city really captivating and wanted to set a story there even before he had gone to experience it.
You could say the same about Tom
He
Waits.
nailed the character of the city. I mean, he
Totally.
really got it
Mhm.
right. Depending on which part of New Orleans you live in, because it's like any other city, there are different chunks that people kind of psychically and socially live in. But he really hit that street level thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that he's got just exactly right.
Yeah. In a literal sense, in that opening, which also we should mention is soundtracked by a Tom Waits song.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A Tom Waits song starts this film, and a Tom Waits song ends this
Ends
film.
the film.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, jockey full of bourbon,
Yes,
Yeah.
from
So-
the Rain Dogs album.
Great song.
Yes.
Yeah.
Super.
which is a New York
moody.
recording. He recorded that when he was living in New York.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
He said Rain Dogs really influenced how he wrote the songs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, on that topic too, that like Tom Waits even being in this movie had something to do with his presence in New York as well. He hadn't moved there yet by this point, but Jim Jarmusch and Tom Waits met at a birthday party for the painter Jean-Michel Basquiat
Oh.
in
Uh,
I think 1984, and I think they immediately took a liking to each other, and they just kind of spent a whole night together where they stayed up till the sunrise, which, if you know the Tom Waits discography, sounds a little bit like what might precede the lyrics of Old 55, say. But yeah, that they just kind of hit it off immediately, and Jim Jarmusch knew that he wanted to write a story that featured both him and John Lurie, who, it's worth saying, is another musician turned actor.
That's true.
Very true. Yeah.
And also contributed to this film's soundtrack in composing the score that occupies the rest of it. And so, yeah, I think it's worth saying. I mean, this is the first Jarmusch film that we're covering, and it's well known about him that there's a very palpable sense of realism to his films, but really like kind of a realism centered on ennui. That it's about showing these characters in idle moments. I think it's
Mhm.
like the way that he makes his films. I feel like his thinking is arguably very similar to someone like Richard Linklater, and yet the finished products feel very different.
I mean, I think that there is a lot of patience
Mhm.
needed in a good way. Like, I was, after rewatching the film, so I had seen this before. I had watched it with you, Dad, at some point. I was asking Dougie, when did we watch this with my parents? And we couldn't really place when, but we definitely have at some point, in the last decade or so. But I didn't have
some Christmas.
yeah, I didn't have super strong memories, though, of the film itself, of any of the details. I mostly remembered the last, 15 minutes or so, because I think that actually when I watched this with you, I may have fallen asleep and then woken up when they get to
the road.
Nicoletta's restaurant and being very confused, being like, where are they? Who is this woman?
Yeah, they were just in a sinking boat,
so
fighting over food.
I'm thrilled to have rewatched it because as soon as I put it on and as soon as that beginning shot happens, I was like, well, this is a perfect movie.
Yeah, Nicoletta was played by Benigni's actual wife.
Yeah.
Dude, there's some chemistry there.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of movies together.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and like a prior
her name is Nicoletta.
Yeah, her actual name is Nicoletta. That's actually a great segue to what I was just thinking of, which is like a prior movie that we discussed in this cycle, Licorice Pizza. There is a lot, maybe just in the name sense of bringing real people into the story of this movie, that the actress is actually named Nicoletta, but also that Roberto Benigni plays a character named Roberto.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And Tom Waits was in Licorice Pizza.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how we started our whole cycle, and we're coming back around.
Love it. Yeah. So, I mean, of the three movies that we're going to discuss today, Down by Law, it's probably the one that features Tom Waits most prominently and maybe gives him the most to do. And Down by Law has a pretty simple, what you see is what you get kind of filmmaking ethos. And I'd be curious to ask you guys, like, do you feel like a movie like this, with this type of spirit, do you feel like it serves somebody like Tom Waits as an actor? And I would also be curious to know if you feel like it runs contrary in any way to our perception of him as a musician or as an artist more broadly.
I'm really glad that we've chosen these three particular films because I think they're all very different performances, and it showcases him as an actor. I think it showcases his range quite a lot. Mm-hmm. This, as opposed to the next movie we're talking about, which is definitely like a character.
Yeah.
Whereas this character of Zack feels not that much of a departure from his actual self in the best way. And I think in the way that Jarmusch is very good at bringing out of people, where it does feel very naturalistic.
Waits, particularly early on, lived kind of a street life. Mm-hmm. He was never really into the 60s drug culture thing. He was like a guy from the 30s or 40s stranded in the 60s and 70s. He hung out in pool halls and dive bars and drank a lot, and he lived that kind of street life. And this character seems like that guy stepped into this movie. Now, I saw him do a thing with, I can't remember the interviewer now, but the interviewer said something like, you'd be a fun guy to spend the weekend drinking bourbon in the gutter with. And Waits said, well, you got to realize that's a character. That is not the real Tom Waits.
Mm-hmm.
That's a character. But he was sort of like that early.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like in this movie, like Maddie says, he's kind of, maybe he's not playing himself, but he's playing a character that he has played for years.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
In his music, particularly his early music.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, to your question, Emilio, of how is this in dialogue with how we understand the person in general? I don't think there's a single Tom Waits acting role that's not in dialogue with how we know him as a general public figure.
Yeah.
In a way that complements the work. I don't think I've said it on this podcast, but something that I've said to other people and thought to myself for years is that if I ever get to act in movies, I want to be cast for the reasons you would cast someone like Tom Waits, which is not to say that my vibe resembles him at all, but that because it has to be him and only him.
Yeah.
I think that Tom Waits is the only person who can play any of the roles that he's been cast in. And I say that knowing that many people have played Renfield in the various iterations of Dracula.
But very different kinds of Renfield.
Yes, exactly. And so it's really, I think that's really one of the amazing things about him as a musician, as an actor, as a public figure in general. I remember reading a retrospective review on Pitchfork of a reissue of one of his albums a few years ago that described Tom Waits in his early career as being 25 going on 70. Just when I think about him in this movie and like the dialogue between that and the rest of his career, I mean, I'm kind of struck by how quiet he is in Down by Law.
Yeah, I mean, something I think I started to say earlier and then lost my train of thought is about the patience that this movie requires. And after rewatching it, I was reading some people saying online and hearing some people saying on podcasts that they thought that this movie was slow, or at least slow in the first half, like until they get to the jail. And I don't find this slow at all.
Neither do I.
Same.
Yeah.
I like, but I understand, I think,
I do too.
what they're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
And I think it's because Jarmusch really takes his time with a lot of these shots. You linger a lot. There's silence. There's just these extended moments where there's not action. You're just there to absorb the vibe and the energy of these characters. And I think that that's something that Tom Waits is really good at holding. And I don't know that every actor can hold that kind of space.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are no exploding cars, no chase scenes, but you've got Tom Waits sitting across from Bird grocery store, drinking and singing to himself for a couple minutes until Bob wanders by with, Bob's,
He's a
great
sad and beautiful
philosophical
world.
insight
It's a
into
sad and
life.
beautiful world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the one.
Yes.
Which,
And that was a location I recognized. That place is now called the Small Mart.
oh yeah,
So
Small
So if you're ever
Mart.
in New Orleans, go to Small Mart, not the one that's down the street from the coffee shop we go to, Maddie.
Okay.
He had to move. He got kicked out of that
Oh,
spot,
that's a bummer.
and he moved down into the Maroney, and that's where Small Mart is now. But anyway,
Very cool.
but he just is sitting there singing to himself, and then Bob shows up trying to speak English and looking in his little notebook to try to talk to this guy, and does not really get very far with talking to Zack. And remember Zack's response to Bob, buzz off.
Oh yeah. Right.
But it is a very slow scene, but it's a key scene
Yeah.
because it's when they first meet, and it really establishes a relationship between Zack and Bob, although they never mentioned later that either one of them recognized each other.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a great point.
I
Yeah.
would think they don't really say how much time has passed, but they are in prison, like not in like a county jail. Like I
Yeah.
think they've been sentenced
Right.
at this point.
Right.
So I imagine it's been a while.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think one of the scenes that always sticks out for me is kind of like the second half of the first scene where you meet Zack.
Yeah.
He has him and Lorette are having this big kind of knockout, drag out thing. She's, throwing his records all over the place. As a DJ or as somebody who makes their money in music, I would have to imagine that that's like pretty awful, but I think it's very telling. He doesn't really care about all the records that are getting destroyed, but what he cares about are the boots.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
look at those boots.
I know, they're
Wouldn't
pretty
you
cool.
care?
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are Tom Waits'
It's-
actual shoes, by the way.
Ah,
Oh, great.
no wonder.
And yeah, like
It's not the shoes, not the shoes. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
the one thing she's not allowed
Yeah.
to touch.
Yeah, and
Those the shoes.
Lorette throws them out the window, and then you get a good 3 minutes after that of him sitting down by the curb, shining them with a rag, and then putting them back on.
Well, that's the exact scene that I think about when
Yeah.
I think about what you were describing, Madeline, is that he's kind of like in the wreckage of, this relationship that is just blown up in his face. And I think there's just something really cinematic about how little he's doing, about how we're just kind of drawn to the simple expressions and very like limited physicality that he has. He just kind of like plops down on the curb, and you're kind of like hanging there. You're like, what's he gonna do? And he's just like, just polishes his shoes and puts them on and is like, all right, cool. All of this is just in the past. There's something about how he operates in that scene that I think just really draws you in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's just to what Julian was saying earlier. I don't know that there's a lot of people that you could put in that part and have a scene like that work as well.
Yeah.
And and that scene also, I mean, I think maybe you could say this about any moment in Down by Law, but that scene to me feels like the scene that would most directly cross over to a Tom Waits song. It's very easy to imagine him just like narrating like, He sat down at the curb to shine his shoes after his girlfriend threw them out the window.
Zack and his shoes. And notice he's wearing shoes, which are nice shoes, but he takes those off, throws them away to put on the ones that he shined with the rag.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is what matters to him, his shoes, not the woman, not the records, and he's a DJ.
Which I know he said that I don't think he's currently working anywhere, but they shout out a few stations, and they shout out WWOZ, which is a New Orleans radio station, which is still functioning.
Yeah. I actually, from the few times I've visited there, I actually know that radio station.
Yeah. And apparently the other ones that they mention are not New Orleans radio stations. They are, I believe, Ohio radio stations.
Interesting.
He has at least shared with Laurette that he's been employed at other places like Baltimore.
Yeah.
And
Baltimore and
New York. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so a little bit of a radio DJ vagabond. When he does his radio banter in the jail cell with Jack, once they're together there, the station that he sticks to is WYLD, which I don't know if that's a real station, but I mean, it spells wild.
I was like, it should be.
Yeah, definitely should.
He's Lee Baby Sims, I think is what he calls himself. Which it turns out is based on a real DJ he heard when he was a kid that he didn't think was still in operation. And it turns out Lee Baby Sims was still around, and I think there might have been a little bit of legal difficulty once the movie came out of you used my name. But I think it was settled in, just like apologies and we're sorry. And, it's just that I remember you when I was a kid. But yeah, he's Lee Baby Sims is what he calls himself as a DJ. I found that interesting also.
Turnabout is fair play when it comes to legal stuff with Tom Waits.
On speaking of fun facts about that character, that apparently Jim Jarmusch initially wrote the character of Zack as being a musician, but that he and Tom Waits agreed to make the character a DJ to make him more distant from who he is in real life. So
I like that.
Yeah, to the extent that this character is different from who he really is. I mean, it's maybe not very far removed, but it's not identical too.
I really like that though, because it kind of, like you say, puts some distance between who Tom Waits actually is, but it also puts some distance between music and the character Zack. Yeah. Like he kind of never gives this vibe that, being a radio DJ is like his life calling and that he's super passionate about it. It seems like he's just kind of doing it because it's like a way to pay the bills and it's easy for him to do.
The guy really is a loser, and so is Jack. Yeah. They're both losers. And I also find it interesting. They both, and you've mentioned this, they both start out with women who they lose.
Yeah.
At the end of the movie, who winds up with the beautiful woman?
Good point. Yeah.
It's Bob, the sweet-natured guy,
who
not
killed
these
someone.
supposed ladies' men, the DJ and the pimp, but the tourist who killed a guy by bouncing a cue ball off his head. He winds up with the girl.
It does feel like this was in self-defense.
Yeah.
From Bob's description.
Yes, the way he describes it, you throw a poo ball at me, I throw a poo ball at you, and that's what he says. And so he's claiming
he just has better aim.
Although he did admit he was cheating at cards when they tried to kill him. And
but cheating at cards is, that's not a
killable murdering offense. Yeah.
I have a few kind of fun facts about this movie. One, we haven't done this recently, but we do a lot of sometimes credits watching.
Yeah.
And Claire Denis is an assistant director on this movie.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I missed that.
Apparently, she really starts her career as an assistant director on this, also on Paris, Texas. Like, that's kind of
I heard that.
The 70s and 80s for her before she makes her directorial debut.
And I think Paris, Texas and Down by Law share the cinematographer, Robbie Mueller.
That is true.
That's right.
But I saw Claire Denis in the credits and I'm like, no way. That's crazy. And they mention it on one of the many special features on Criterion.
Yeah. So one of the little details that I really liked about this movie was in the prison cell, Zack has clearly written a bunch of stuff and words and scrawled a bunch of things, and he's kind of putting tallies and stuff. But if you see his apartment in the beginning, it's the same exact way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just something really bizarre and kind of interesting, I think, about somebody who just takes to the wall
Yeah.
to keep track of their like random thoughts.
Because it's one thing to do it in a jail cell where you don't have paper. It's another thing to do it in your home.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's something that I kind of like about his character is that he clearly did this before. And so doing it in prison is just kind of a way of maintaining some part of himself.
Yeah.
And it's not really mentioned. It's not really like something that's ever lingered on, but it's something that I caught this time and I really like.
Yeah, and I wrote down some of the quotes that he wrote in his home in the beginning. Two of them in particular. It's not the fall that kills you, it's the sudden stop, which is quoted to someone named Orlando. And the second one is, life is a limbo dance, but it's a question of where you can get down, not how low you can get.
And that one's not attributed.
Down by law.
Yeah, I mean, I almost wonder if like Tom Waits was just brainstorming lyrics for his own albums while, in idle time on the set of this film. You can read into the message of the movie considering those, but it also feels pretty in the spirit of Jarmusch to not do that.
Yeah, definitely.
I was going to ask y'all, if you had to be in a jail cell with either Jack, the John Laurie character, or Zack, the Tom Waits character, which would you pick?
I mean, as a woman, I'm going to say Zack. Jack is a pimp.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would prefer to not associate with a pimp.
Yeah.
I think Zack seems like someone who would maybe be more respectful of my livelihood.
Jack was a complete jerk. Zack had some very good qualities. I mean, remember, Bob can't swim.
Yeah.
Remember when they reached the river?
Yeah.
And they decide
Good
to
point.
swim the river, and Bob says, I can't swim. And the two guys go anyway. I double checked this. The last thing Jack said was, maybe Mark Twain will come by in a steamboat and save you. Then he jumps in the water. Zack says, sorry, man, jumps in, but then comes back because you have Bob stand there by the river talking to himself in Italian. And suddenly Zack's there again, grabs him, drags him off camera, but you can tell they're heading for the river.
Yeah.
So Zack is a better-hearted person.
I also think that Jack needs to chill out. Like in jail, I understand prison is difficult, but I don't think Zack is doing anything that annoying. And Jack just always seems annoyed at Zack for, I think, no good reason.
Yeah,
definitely.
Both of those guys would have been eaten alive in prison.
Yeah.
If they'd been with anyone else. They were guys pretending to be tough guys. Like, remember when they got in the fight in the cell?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was the worst fight I've ever seen. That was like two seventh graders fighting who didn't want to hurt each other.
There's this
it was.
There's this feature.
And I think Jarmusch did that on purpose.
He absolutely did. So there's this feature on the second disc of the Criterion release where Jarmusch is answering questions that people have written in, and one of them is, does Tom Waits actually fight like a pussy? And Jarmusch is like, Tom Waits will kick your ass for real.
I believe that.
If he reads this question. And he goes on to say, like, they're in a confined space. There's not that much space for them to actually effectively fight that well.
Yeah. I always kind of chalked it up a little bit to like, they might have to do a couple takes. I know it's independent filmmaking, and so they maybe only have maybe 2 or 3. But, they're
not stuntmen.
Yeah,
they're tired.
Yeah.
Totally.
Have y'all seen the movie The Defiant Ones with Sidney Poitier?
Oh, man. I'm so glad you brought this up.
That is a great... This is
a great
The
movie.
Defiant Ones meets the Marx Brothers. That's what this movie is.
It
Or maybe
totally-
the Three Stooges. Take your pick.
Richard, I'm so glad you brought up the Defiant Ones because I was thinking about the Defiant Ones a lot when I was watching Down by Law.
And well, to the extent that Jarmusch had conscious inspirations from other films in the writing and making of this one, that was one of them. He mentioned that directly. Thinking back on how Zack behaves in the towards the end of Down by Law, I mean, I think the last scenes with him have some really revealing character moments too, as subdued as they are. But when they're saying goodbye to Bob and Nicoletta, it's Jack who gives them a hug first, and then Zack goes after. But then as they walk down the road and then split off on that fork, after Zack and Jack have their little interaction, it's Zack who's the first one to leave.
Yeah.
Interestingly.
Yeah, because Bob's the glue that holds them together. So
Yeah.
once
Yeah.
Bob's out of the picture, these two guys, they're right back to where they were before Bob when they were in the cell. They just cannot stand each other.
I also feel like that move where Zack puts out his hand and then pulls it away is kind of, I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, okay, it's kind of a dick move. But then this time watching it, I felt like it was one of those things where Zack kind of knows this guy well enough that, like, if he were to actually do that, it would kind of be insincere.
Yeah.
And so in some ways it's more interesting and almost shows a better understanding of Jack from Zack's point of view than would be there if he actually put his hand out to be like, hey man, it's been real. So I don't know. I kind of like that.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
I also just enjoy how when they're talking about the different directions that they're going to go, this song hadn't been written at the time, but that Zack, the Tom Waits character, happens to be going out west.
Oh, I love that song.
Yeah.
That is one of my favorite songs. And it's about acting.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to go out west and become a big actor. This guy's singing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one other thing about Zack real quick. When he's having the argument with his girlfriend and she's throwing his stuff around and everything else, there's never any suggestion that he would even hit her.
I think she
This guy is not.
I think
this
maybe
guy's
she
not a-
says
he's not an
something,
abuser.
or maybe I'm thinking of a
Maybe
different.
No, she does.
emotionally
She's like-
abusive, but
So she
not
says
physically
something like
hit
just
me.
hit me,
Yeah.
but you're so right, Dad, that there's like no threat of it from his side. And it almost is like when she says it doesn't read as if he's hit her in the past. It reads like she's trying to get a reaction out of him.
Yeah. And maybe some type of physical altercation that would make her leave him and have it feel really finite.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Another special feature on this is like a extended phone call between Jarmusch and Tom Waits for the Criterion release.
Nice.
It's about 40 minutes. And one of the stories that they tell is when they're shooting, I think it's the Sad and Beautiful World scene, Paul Rubens walks up
What?
Oh,
like unshaven in a leather jacket. And it's
no
just sort of
way.
like, hey, and they're just like chatting for a little bit. Like they don't know each other. And so they're just reflecting on this phone call. Like, remember when Paul Rubens just like wandered into our shot?
wow.
Pee-wee.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Very weird.
Yeah.
Are there any last little details we want to shout out about Down by Law? Anything that we want to make sure gets mentioned?
Well, there's two little things I can think of. One of them, this is more of a tendency than just one little detail, but as kind of ennui laden as all of these characters can be, there's a few moments where you see Zack genuinely happy in the movie. And I think the ones that stood out to me are when, after they've been lost in the woods, when they find the road again, he's like, civilization.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There's a big smile on his face there. And also, after he's been, served a good meal at Nicoletta's, then even earlier on too, when there's that first conversation between all three of them, Bob, Zack, and Jack, in the cell when they're all holding they're all standing up by the bars, that at the point when Bob is saying to them, like, we are a good egg,
Oh,
that,
that's nice.
that Zack
Yeah.
seems to genuinely enjoy that moment. So
I mean, I think
Yeah.
Bob brings out this kind of joy in both of them to a certain extent. You definitely see some grins in the ice cream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream.
ice cream, you
section.
scream, we all scream for ice cream. Yeah. It's the loudest that
Bob
movie
has
gets.
life nailed. It's a sad and beautiful world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's bringing that, and I think Zack gets that more than Jack. The other thing I loved about Bob is he's the symbol of freedom because he takes the whatever it is chalk and he draws the window
Mhm.
Mhm.
in their
good
cell,
point.
and he's drawing it. And I think it was Jack who asked him, "What are you doing, Bob?" He says, "I'm drawing a window. We need a window."
Yeah.
So it's just like he has this whole attitude. And I think, about joy in life. And that's Tom Waits. And Tom Waits be careful listening to Tom Waits because he sings about really tough stuff, a lot about death and about lost love and all those things. But the beauty of it
Yeah.
And so this attitude that Bob brings is really the attitude you find in a lot of Tom Waits songs. It's a sad world.
Oh,
I was
interesting.
listening to a song today that's a beautiful waltz, Widow's Grove, a beautiful waltz. And he's singing about meeting this beauty. He's singing to her. And then you get to the last verse and you find out that he drowns her in a well.
Good
So
Lord.
it's this beautiful, you think, love song. Then you find out this guy singing is a psychotic killer. He killed this woman. So, but so many of Waits' songs are like that. It's a sad world, but you can also find beauty in it if you look for it.
Mhm.
You know, that's what Bob was saying.
Yeah,
Totally.
that's what he represents.
Yeah.
I wanted to shout out really quick that Zack, when he's in the car right before he gets apprehended, he's singing a little bit of Roy Orbison's Crying,
Yep.
which is a song that I love, but I also want to call back to the fact that there was another Roy Orbison moment in another film that we talked in this cycle, which was The Man Who Fell to Earth.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, anytime we can shout out a Roy Orbison song, I'm going to be there doing it, yelling from the hilltops. How about you, Madeline?
One
Yeah,
last
I'm done.
thing, since you're all the musicians. In the end, when Bob is dancing with Nicoletta, they're playing the song Drip Drop. I went online trying to find out what song people think that is, and everyone says that's the song. It's Raining by Dion, or I can't remember the other group. That song is
The
Drip Drop
Belmonts?
by Irma Thomas, the great New
Ah.
Orleans singer.
Ah,
It's
cool.
the same song, but she sang it first as Drip Drop. It was
yeah.
re-recorded in 58, and then Dion did it in 63. So all you people out there looking online, what's this great song I'm hearing? Oh, it's Dion. And Dion was fine, but Dion was no Irma Thomas. It's Drip Drop by Irma Thomas.
And Dad, it's written by Alan Toussaint, right? I think.
I think it might be, yeah. He was another New Orleans guy.
Yep.
Who Tom Waits is a big fan of.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I think it feels fitting to close off talking about this movie, just maybe situating it in the greater Jim Jarmusch oeuvre, where he is a great caster of musician actors in general.
Yeah.
You know, obviously Tom Waits and John Lurie in Down by Law, but also throughout his career, people like Iggy Pop, various members of the Wu-Tang Clan.
Joe Strummer in Mystery Train.
Yeah.
That's true. I still need to see that one.
That's a great one.
I think we all probably felt that in assembling this cycle, there had to be some Jarmusch.
Well, he put Waits and Iggy Pop together in Coffee and Cigarettes.
Yeah.
Also in The Dead Don't Die. Like Iggy Pop is a zombie in that movie. Tom Waits is the hermit who wanders on the edge of town and kind of narrates the whole thing as it happens. Great casting for both of them.
Speaking of creatures of the night,
Love it.
our next movie is Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, comes out in 1992, in which Tom Waits plays Renfield. I'm really excited to talk about this one. And what we should start off to say this movie should not be confused with Bram Stoker's Van Helsing, which was apparently released in 2021. And although it only seems to have gotten a theatrical release in Denmark, it sounds like this movie is basically the same story as the movie we're about to talk about, but without Dracula in it.
Strange.
Important.
You know, the most interesting part of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah, very true. I would also say that on that note, we should not confuse Bram Stoker's Dracula with the Stephen Sommers 2004 film Van Helsing.
Yeah.
That starred Hugh Jackman and Kate Beckinsale. And I'm going to shout out a character in that his name is Kevin J. O'Connor. Kevin J. O'Connor is probably best known for playing I think his character's name was Benny in The Mummy, but I have a personal connection with Kevin J. O'Connor because his brother was my art teacher in grade school.
Oh, cool.
And Kevin J. O'Connor came to my school to talk about the release of The Mummy in advance of that film coming out. So we were all super stoked to see that movie.
That's nice.
But anyway, The Mummy, Van Helsing, none of these are Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yes, and because Dracula is probably one of the most adapted to film stories in history, this version, the 1992 version, is not to be confused with Dracula by any other name, whether it be Nosferatu, the original F.W. Murnau one from 1922, or Werner Herzog's remake in the 70s, or most recently Robert Eggers' remake from just last year. It should also not be confused with the Todd Browning Dracula from 1931, which famously put Bela Lugosi in the spotlight as the character, or in the Hammer horror films version of it from the 1950s, which starred Christopher Lee as the titular vampire. No, this is not any of those. This comes amidst all of these other adaptations.
Another adaptation is in the episode of SpongeBob where the lights keep going out at night, and it turns out to be Nosferatu flipping the light switch.
Nosferatu.
That's right.
Yeah.
They also did Dracula and Gilligan's Island when I was a kid. Gilligan turned into a vampire. But the one I'd like to mention, and this is something you might want to jump on YouTube and watch. It's a 10-minute short called The Curious Case of R.N. Renfield by a guy named Brian Ink, E-N-K. And it's just this actor's face as Renfield talking about what has happened to him. And it is so mesmerizing. And the filming, it's reminds me of Blair Witch Project, the way they did his face. It's really good. It's just a 10-minute thing, The Curious Case of R.M. Renfield. So don't confuse it with this one, but go on YouTube and look at that.
Cool.
And apropos to this conversation, Tom Waits is the Renfield of this particular adaptation.
Which is the reason why we should not confuse this with the film Renfield.
From just 2 years ago.
Yes, starring Nicholas Hoult as the Renfield to Nicolas Cage's Dracula.
Yeah.
Good point.
Who is another member, appropriately, of the Coppola family.
So, Madeline.
Yes.
What is Bram Stoker's Dracula about?
I mean, as we said,
there
have been many adaptations of this classic story over the years. This is one of the few whose title so prominently features the name of this story's originator, Bram Stoker. So, quickly, in the 15th century, mighty warrior Vlad Dracula returns from a brutal yet victorious battle to find that his beloved Elisabetta has jumped to her death after being told that he had perished. Furious at God for this betrayal, he renounces the church, desecrates the chapel, and transforms into a vampire. A little over 400 years later, our mysterious vampire is finalizing a deal to purchase several plots of property around the city of London. To help him finalize these acquisitions, young solicitor Jonathan Harker, played by Keanu Reeves, travels to Dracula's castle in Transylvania in place of his predecessor, R.M. Renfield, who seemingly went insane after his interaction with the Count. Although Jonathan was likely already in danger, he certainly will not make it out of this castle anytime soon once Dracula discovers that his fiancée is an exact lookalike for Elisabetta. Back in London, this very fiancée, Mina, is staying with her well-to-do friend Lucy, who's considering her options for marriage. However, not even her chosen one will be able to save her from the attack of Dracula, who soon arrives in London after sailing all the way from Transylvania with several crates of his homeland soil. As Lucy begins to transform, her desperate lovers call in Dr. Abraham Van Helsing. Will he be able to halt her transformation and keep Dracula's ultimate target, Mina, from befalling the same fate?
Very
Probably
nice.
not.
No, yeah.
We've all seen
or
the
maybe
movie.
not. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, it's worth saying that between this and all the other adaptations of the story, they're like they all take some different liberties with the ending.
Absolutely. And I mean, with a lot of the story in general, I think that this kind of romance between Dracula and Mina is kind of specific to this version.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I've read the book, and there was not a romance between Dracula and Mina in the book. He was not. This they try to make Dracula a maybe not attractive, but a sympathetic character in some ways.
Yeah.
This is definitely the horniest Dracula that I think that's been out there.
Yeah. The version I think that I have the most familiarity with apart from this is the Robert Eggers Nosferatu, which was just released last Christmas. And that, I mean, I think that, you know, to both of the things that you're saying, it might give this film a run for its money, but in a very different vibe.
Yeah.
That like, you know, whereas, you know, this version, Francis Ford Coppola's version is very campy. And I say that in a good way, that the Robert Eggers version is much more I feel like this is an overused word, but grounded.
Yeah.
And that, it's, I don't know if you'd call it romance, but there's an entanglement between the Mina character, who has a different name, and Nosferatu in that version.
One thing that I liked about this movie, no other movie that I've seen has included the Texan cowboy character.
Yeah.
He is in the book. He is a major character in the book. In
Okay,
fact,
good.
the epilogue talks about Harker and Mina eventually have a child, and they name it after the cowboy because he
Aw.
was so key in saving Mina from Dracula. Y'all can give the spoiler if you want, but something happens at the end in a
Definitely.
big battle trying to save Mina. And anyway, they wind up naming their child after the cowboy, whose name I can't remember.
Whose
But,
name
did.
is Quincy P. Morris.
Quincy, that's
Quincy,
right.
yes.
And he
Quincy.
had such a big Bowie knife.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
everyone
did.
was so fascinated with his large Bowie knife.
I know.
When
I
that
wonder if
act-
that's a stand-in for something else.
So, who among us had seen this film before, and what did we think?
I can start because it's been well documented on this podcast that when I was a teenager, I think I saw everything I could get my hands on that had Winona Ryder in it.
Totally.
I'm gonna say this. It was not motivated by like a teenage like crush obsession. It was more motivated by the fact that I loved the movie Heathers, and
Yeah.
I loved that she loved the movie Heathers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this girl's got great taste. What else has she been in? So yeah, I saw this movie as a teenager. I feel like I just remember this movie being really bloody. There's a lot of blood.
Yeah.
A lot of blood sucking. It's a vampire movie.
Absolutely, but like shamelessly bloody.
Fountains coming out of the altar.
Exactly, yeah. I don't remember it being quite as like rooted in this like sort of sexual perversion, like sort of female sexual awakening. I don't really remember that too much, but I definitely saw it. And I remember thinking it was fine. I don't think I would have rewatched it unless we were going to talk
for
about
assignment.
it for a podcast.
I've always seen vampires as being Nazi sexual predators,
Yeah.
which is why
Yeah.
they make good bad guys, because you don't feel guilty when they get killed off.
Mhm.
I
This
better
one's
understand what you meant
different.
now.
He is in
by
a
that. I like
way, but it's based on, at least for Mina, it's based on love. Not so much Lucy,
Yeah.
but for Mina, it is based on love. And I saw it years ago, and I loved it because I liked the way it included the characters, chasing him through the mountains,
Right.
and the cowboys, and they have that big battle scene. And so much in this movie included things that aren't included in most movies. But the main thing was Tom Waits just blew me right out of it. His performance is so absolutely powerful, and he doesn't have that much screen time.
He really doesn't.
Yeah.
But he just grabs you.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
He uses every second of it. And like I was kind of getting to when we were talking about the other movie, is it just feels like such a like juicy character. Like with the limited screen time that you have, you still want to know more about him. It's like you kind of want like a whole section or like a whole movie about Renfield, which, be careful what you wish for, I guess. I didn't see that Renfield. Maybe it was fine.
I've heard it's a fun movie.
But Tom Waits just brings this kind of energy, this like manic energy that just feels very like primal in a way that I think a lot of more classically trained actors maybe don't always want to like go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is at least of the films that we're talking about now, this is the one that really features, I think, Tom Waits as a very unique, wholly of his own like vocal talent.
Yeah.
Just the like, I do not want to be this guy's ENT. Like, I can't imagine like what's going on in this dude's throat. I would agree with you. There's this kind of crazy abandon in the performance and how much kind of yelling he does, but I like it too because it feels recognizable in some ways to his singing voice, but also like a little different. It's kind of cool. Yeah, it is. It is that. But it also like
a good accent.
There's like a little bit of a different gear with this one. Where it's like it's not him being kind of like this like boozy guy
like
who's just got to tell you a story.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like somebody who is like actually possessed. You know?
Yeah, he's a fanatic.
Yeah, Renfield's into Bloody Marys, not bourbon. So yeah.
I like that.
Well, Madeline, had you seen this before?
I had not actually.
Same.
So I really enjoyed finally getting to this. I have a few Coppola blind spots, and I think I'm filling all of them just from this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I it's a very interesting movie to consider in the Coppola filmography because I think I would imagine most viewers probably have the greatest familiarity with his 70s output. The first two Godfathers, The Conversation, and Apocalypse Now. And I think, especially in light of Megalopolis, something that a lot of people kind of misunderstand about Coppola, when they're looking only at those 70s masterpieces, is that there's like, when he's doing his thing, there's kind of a sprawl to it. There's like a very purposeful messiness to his movies. There's something kind of frantic about them by design. And that's why, if you can see that, that's why I feel like Megalopolis hasn't had much of like very much discussion about it just yet. I don't think it's gotten its due in that way, but I consider myself a defender of that movie. And I think knowing what that movie was like helped me understand watching this version of Dracula too, because I think there is, like it feels to a degree like Coppola is throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. In a way that I personally enjoy.
Yeah, I listened to the commentary on this DVD, which is just Coppola. And I think single-person commentaries are always, they can be hit or miss because it's difficult to get one person to talk for that long and have them not just repeat themselves.
They can go quiet for like long stretches and you're like, oh, they're just watching the movie now.
Yeah. But I think this one is pretty good. And he talks a lot about how this is in such a weird point in his career because he had never really wanted to make Godfather Part 3. He said several times, like, the thing I never thought I'd do is make a third Godfather. But it's like his 80s output are not super financially successful. And he's struggling a lot financially, which is, I think, what motivates him to finally make Godfather Part 3 and then kind of leads into this film as well. And then apparently he makes a lot of investments in like wine.
Yep.
And like now he's good. But it's like the money that he's able to make from this movie and from Godfather Part 3 that really set him up for us eventually getting a movie like Megalopolis because he's able to self-finance eventually.
Well, you mentioned how this fits in with Coppola. It's kind of a strange time as far as Waits is concerned, and I think I mentioned this before, we started recording. He writes and records Bone Machine, which is one of his really good CDs during this time. And if you listen to that CD, you can definitely hear, he's not singing about vampires, but you can see some of that same view about death in it.
Yeah.
I wanted to read you a quote from an actor who worked, Richard Grant.
Richard E. Grant, who we've talked about before because he's in Saltburn.
Yeah, and we talked about him tangentially in a different episode too. When we talked about Green Book because he was nominated for an Oscar that year.
Here's what he said about Tom Waits. He said, he was extraordinary. I was looking after him in the asylum, so I had a scene where I was inside his cell in which he tried to attack me. He was the most inventive improviser I've ever come across.
Wow.
I've never seen him since, but we got on so well after that. I love his music. He was extraordinarily inventive and open about everything. Because he was a musician, his approach wasn't like any other actor I've ever met. And this is a guy in a movie with Anthony Hopkins saying this about Waits, about how fantastic this guy was, just blew him away.
Wow.
And I'm wondering in that scene, did he literally scare Grant when he goes for his throat?
They were vibing on this like different frequency, man. And like anything goes,
Totally. Yeah. I just love that those two actors shared a scene. Tom Waits and Richard E. Grant.
This is a film full of really broad performances, and I think Waits is included in that, but I still think he's such a standout in this. I think, Dad's talking about watching this for the first time and having Tom Waits be the one that really blows you away. I think that that's kind of universal with this movie. So you have these more academic actors and performers like Gary Oldman and Anthony Hopkins, and then you have these kind of arguably less polished performances from Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, even though I do like Winona Ryder in this.
Do too.
Yeah, she's good.
But
she's
it's
good.
like, she's giving a very different kind of performance than some of these others, and I think is closer to the Keanu Reeves kind of realm. How do you guys think Tom Waits fits into this whole ensemble?
I like that you put it this way because I was thinking about that consciously while watching, that there's this spectrum. Like, I think ever since a few episodes ago, our Man Who Fell to Earth episode, I would just had this reflection about the actor Rip Torn in that episode, that he's someone who can do the campy and the really grounded with kind of equal enthusiasm and equal measure. And I've been keeping like a little list for myself of actors who can do that kind of thing ever since recording that. And I think you see that spectrum in the performances in Bram Stoker's Dracula, because you have people. I think actually Gary Oldman himself does a great job of representing both sides of that in his performance.
He's incredible in this movie.
He is, and
he really is.
For a comparison, his performance made me think a lot of the way that across numerous Star Wars movies that Ian McDiarmid plays Emperor Palpatine. That especially in the prequels, when you see the part of Palpatine that is not on the nose pure evil, like he is pure evil, but you see the part of him that has to have a little more decorum as the Chancellor.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people on Letterboxd are like, why does Gary Oldman look like Emperor Palpatine?
And another point that justifies this comparison is that Ian McDiarmid first played that role, even though Emperor Palpatine is famously a very old, who knows how old character. Ian McDiarmid first played that role when he was in his late 30s. In Return of the Jedi.
Wow. Okay. Oh, yeah. That checks out.
And Gary Oldman was in his 30s in the making of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
But he has this range of ages. At the beginning, you get kind of the Palpatine look, and then you also get the handsome
steampunk
prince.
looking.
This is true. But I bring that up though because I feel like this range that you see, I think you can tell when Gary Oldman is intentionally going campy and when he's trying to be a little more muted. With Tom Waits, I feel like they're both there, they're one and the same all the time, that I feel like his sensibility is equally suitable for camp and more grounded performances, and I feel like that it comes across superbly in his performance as Renfield. Like most of his other roles, I mean, it really does feel like something that even if you know him as a singer, it feels of a piece with that persona. There's something about the depth of the soul that he's coming from there, and the way he's just screaming it out. I mean, well, fittingly, there's a song on Bone Machine called "The Earth Died Screaming," and I feel like that you feel some of that energy coming across in this character.
Yeah.
But it's real and it's heightened at the same time.
Yeah. I feel like he gets a little bit of an assist from the fact that character can kind of stay there. I think one of the things that's really cool about the Gary Oldman performance is, as we were saying, like he's covering this huge age range. One of the things that struck me about the movie watching it this time is how many forms he takes. Yeah. It's kind of like a tour de force of having to inhabit all of these like crazy costumes and like personalities and like visual setups.
I almost found it like kind of confusing.
Oh yes.
At some points, like the scene of him and Lucy, I didn't necessarily put it together at first that's supposed to be Dracula. I was like, this is a werewolf that has escaped. That is a different person.
Right.
At first, because it's like that's the first time we see that form, and we don't see it that much after that. And then you've got kind of the bat that turns
one,
into the pile of rats.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And so there's that. There's this very kind of like almost operatic style of performing there. There's the kind of the Anthony Hopkins, Gary Oldman sort of like mix, but then and then there's the younger characters who feel like they also have to be kind of on this roller coaster.
Yeah.
And Tom Waits is the constant.
He does feel very
It's the constant,
Yeah.
which I think is like really important in a movie like this, is that like from the very beginning, he's the dude who's supposed to represent like how bad this all can go and will go.
Yeah.
And he absolutely kills it.
There's one critic, a guy named, Stephen Barker. He said this about Waits. He said he treated each scene as a piece of performance art. Waits' performance remains a definitive study of how to portray madness and loyalty with depth and nuance. And he brings up I think it might have been one of the last lines he said when he was screaming at Dr. Jack. You think I'm mad, Dr. Jack, but I'm a sane man trying to save his soul.
Yeah,
He's
I
the
love
only
that
guy
line.
who knows what's going on. Like
Yeah.
you said, he's a symbol of what can happen. He's the one guy who knows what's going on.
Mhm.
Well,
Totally.
Van Helsing sort of does
Kind
too.
of.
Yeah.
But
And
Van Helsing isn't
Arguably
living
even
it.
less helpful.
I
There's
feel
a
like
point I want to bring up about Van Helsing.
Mhm.
I found out that he also plays the priest
Yeah.
who announces to Dracula that his bride killed herself and therefore is damned,
Yeah.
which I
Mm.
did not know.
Yes, I did catch
And
that in the
I
beginning.
did too,
Yeah.
fact,
yeah.
I
But
wouldn't have. Dougie did.
partway through the movie, Helsing makes some comment like, I have sought you for years or ages.
Totally.
Is he the reincarnation of that priest and has been pursuing this guy for 400 years?
I think that is kind of the implication.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
because Anthony Hopkins plays both characters. But yeah, I mean, Dad, I found that line where he's like, I've pursued you my whole life or whatever, very interesting because I'm like, wait, you're like a doctor. Like, you're not a vampire hunter that we know of. Like, when Richard E. Grant's Dr. Jack calls him, it's not because, like, I know about vampires and this guy's a vampire expert. It's because this guy is actually a good doctor and
Right.
is like the best in his field when it comes to these kind of blood diseases,
Right.
which I guess is akin to vampirism, I guess.
As
Yeah.
close as you can get where you're still kind of talking in clinical terms or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, with Anthony Hopkins playing that part, you can't not mention that this is just 1 year after he played Hannibal Lecter, too.
Yeah.
The irony of going from being the vampire to the vampire hunter.
Yeah, totally.
But also that this feels like, of the Hopkins roles I've seen, the closest he gets to playing Frederick Treves in The Elephant Man once again.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
I definitely see
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that on several levels is some very expert casting. But going back to the presence of Tom Waits in the film as Renfield, I think that like when I don't know how much this comes across throughout the different adaptations, but especially after the Robert Eggers Nosferatu, I was thinking a lot about this story as, you know, like among several analogies, an analogy for the rise of a totalitarian, you know, the way that Dracula, you know, how he travels and becomes such a prominent figure in all of the characters' lives. And that Renfield is the acolyte to this totalitarian, that he is, you know, the person who has aided him in his rise, but you get the sense not from a place of, like, he is devoted, but not from a place of pure idolization or idealization of the figure that he's been ensnared in a way. He can both aid the rise of Dracula, but also prevent it from becoming the worst thing possible.
But I think because he's been brought in to Dracula's world and he's being tempted by this
Immortality
idea
or
of
whatever.
immortality.
Yeah.
And he's referring to Dracula as his master.
Mm-hmm.
So he has some amount of power to help, but he's not going to, because ultimately he's there to side with Dracula. When he warns Mina, that is kind of an interesting swerve for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's almost this message of like, it's too late for me. It's not too late for you there.
Yeah, it almost feels like there's been some kind of like soul searching from Renfield in his cell that we don't really see. But it does seem like he has this kind of shift to the scene you were talking about, Dad, where he says like trying to save his soul. that doesn't feel like something the Renfield from the beginning of the movie would necessarily say. So it almost feels like he's kind of reckoning with what's happening and the effects that it could have on him and also on Mina, who's now an actual person he's looking at.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah,
I like
true.
You also assume he went through what Harker went through.
Yeah.
You know, Harker being, back at the castle and the three vampire women and all that. And
Monica
you assume he
Bellucci.
went through that
Yep.
whole, the brides. You assume he went through all that as well. And then was sent to England, but then is put in a mental institution, although he's not insane.
He's just trying to save his soul.
And another thing, a critic wrote, and I can't remember who, but it's that Renfield's view of the world is similar to Tom Waits' view of the world. Again, that's how Waits was able to play this role so well, because I think he could understand Renfield's madness, and he probably is also used to the idea of people looking at me and think I'm nuts. I'm not nuts. I just see things slightly different than others. Maybe I see them properly and everyone else is nuts.
Yeah.
That's really what Renfield's saying.
Yeah, one of the things that I also really like is in the cell, I like the costuming. I like that he's in this like funky suit with these arms that sometimes it's like a straight jacket, like but with like giant arms.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Waits refers to that as being like a moth.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the scene from Silence of the Lambs when the deputy was murdered and was strung up above the cage.
Yeah.
Almost like a bat. And I'm wondering
Yeah.
if Coppola was thinking of that when he told his costume designer, do something sort of like that.
Maybe Anthony Hopkins on set was like, yo, you know what? I was just in this movie. We did this thing.
I mean, I think this is a good time to mention all of the effects. And I mean, they don't use like CGI or those kind of special effects. Like everything here are these more traditional, like in camera effects or practical effects. And that's something
like superimpositions and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That Coppola was so intent on. And he was having trouble finding people that were willing to, go back to some of these were kind of outdated methods that weren't really used anymore. I mean, Roman Coppola's second unit on this. And Francis Ford Coppola on the commentary talks a lot about how so many of these effects that they do are all Roman Coppola, actually.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
Like a lot of the like kind of frame painting for the castle and a lot of those
the, like,
kinds
match
of
cuts where they like kind of come in and out of like paintings of someone into their actual faces.
Yeah, exactly. And like having to roll back the camera.
Under cranking, over cranking. Yeah,
exactly. He was very inspired by the Cocteau Beauty and the Beast.
And
makes
sense.
I feel like you really see that.
Oh, yeah.
And Roman Coppola has, continued to be a relevant name in film by being a repeat collaborator with Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
And when you consider like the ingenuity of a lot of the sets on those movies, that it makes sense that he would be a connecting thread. Yeah, I mean that's a really impressive thing watching this movie all the way from some of the first scenes, and also that it was filmed entirely on sound stages in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
As a story, Dracula is just situated in this really interesting place between what feels like antique and the modern. Because I think, especially because, of how many times it's been adapted and the period in which it's set, it really feels in our collective consciousness like an old story. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not that old.
I was pretty surprised to go back and say like, oh wait, no, this book is from like the late
turn
1800s.
of the century.
Yeah, no, that book is 100 years older than me. 1897 is when it came out. 1897 is when this adaptation is set too.
Yeah.
Which I think is not true of a lot of other adaptations. Certainly not true of the Robert Eggers one, which is set about 60 years earlier. Just seeing like Tom Waits in that straitjacket, I feel like that's a great image to encapsulate the space that this story occupies, because like the straitjacket, I don't know when it was invented, but I do think of it as being, leaning towards the modern in terms of, the really perverse type of design that it embodies. Yeah. And yet in this, like stone prison that denotes a more like something of an older era. Also, just talking about how Tom Waits is costumed, I love those wire rim glasses.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love that they're really similar.
And the hand things.
Yeah.
Do you know what those hand things were?
I don't know. He had like
Do you know what those were?
little cages. I don't know what they were.
He says those are an Italian invention that were used to teach piano players how to hold their hands.
And it did not fix his hands.
Oh, I love
And
that.
he said they hurt. They were very difficult. I mean, they were painful.
Oh, right.
And one reviewer said he did that partly to help him get into that suffering of Renfield, that Tom Waits was actually in some suffering. It's not like he was, in terrible suffering, but he said these things were somewhat painful.
Well,
and that helped him get into the role of this tortured soul.
Well, there's also guys like right outside the cell with like cages on their heads.
Yeah. I know. Some funky.
So I think Dr.
costume
Jack
design.
has some interesting methods.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah. Any little details we want to shout out?
Just another thing that Coppola said on the commentary is how he had noticed that whenever this movie plays on TV, they cut out almost all of Renfield for time. He was like so upset about this.
No,
Yeah.
he's like absolutely essential to the story.
Yeah.
He's like the connecting piece.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that occurred to me is I think Van Helsing and Renfield could be close buddies. I really do. They're both very weird guys in different ways. They're, in some ways, I see them as being alike. One's against Dracula, one's for Dracula. They're the ones who basically know what's going on.
Yeah.
But I can kind of see those guys becoming chums if it wasn't for the Dracula problem.
Just if it wasn't for that vampire they got between them.
It's what they know about the world that would unite them.
Yeah, I like that.
And while we're talking too about Coppola being the director of this, it's worth stating, especially with Tom Waits as an actor, that Tom Waits and Coppola are repeat collaborators. That this was not the first time that they had worked together. That Tom Waits had, I think, written music for and appeared in One from the Heart.
Exactly. Yeah.
But also that he appeared in his next two consecutive film credits after that are both Coppola films too, The Outsiders and Rumblefish. Then there was The Cotton Club, all of which were in a few years in the 1980s. And then even much later on, Tom Waits was the narrator in a Coppola film called Twixt, which up until Megalopolis was the last film that he had made. So, especially considering how strong the Tom Waits performance is in this film, I think, it's worth pointing out that, those two had an ongoing collaboration. And it must be true that Coppola just understood Tom Waits' strength as an actor and knew he was the right guy to cast.
Coppola says that he almost also directed Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
But what he says on the commentary, his thought process was, why am I doing this? I should be reading books or something.
Yeah. Also, that era of movies where not only were they readapting classic monster stories, but stating the authors' names in the titles.
Yeah, I mean, he talks about this because obviously it's also in The Godfather, how, I would assume that maybe because he was attached to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein at some point, like he kind of originated this, put the author's name in front of the movie title thing.
Yeah.
I would imagine that's why that film has that, because he was like kind of speaking to the importance of this on the commentary.
In spite of all the Dracula adaptations that there have been, that this one, especially the 30 and some years that it's been in the world, and has had quite a long shadow, which I say intentionally because one of the works that draws a lot from it is What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, totally.
Like
which Dad has watched also.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Even like the designs of some of the vampires on that show feel like they're directly mimicking some of the designs of Dracula in this film. There's other things too, especially like the whole trope of vampires turning into bats.
Yeah.
Like that's actually a pretty recently popular thing, partially due to this movie.
Do you guys know about the wedding? The wedding in this movie, originally they shot in like an actual church in like
I think
Romania,
I know where you're going with this. Yeah.
or somewhere.
Yeah.
And then they ended up reshooting it at a church in California. They suspect that they maybe accidentally actually married Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder.
Yep.
Not legally,
Yeah.
but like in the eyes of God. I have to ask before we leave this, Emilio, as a big fan of Heathers, I had read that Christian Slater was considered for Jonathan Harker. And I'm curious, as a big Heathers fan, how you would have felt about that casting.
I don't know. I feel like I would have been into it, I think, a little bit. I actually feel like Christian Slater would have been. I know we're talking about how good Tom Waits is as Renfield, but I feel like
I do
Christian
think he'd
Slater,
be a better Renfield than
exactly.
Harker.
Yeah.
Like,
Although I don't think he'd be better than Tom Waits.
he
I
would
think
not be
Tom
better
Waits,
than Tom
yeah.
Waits, but I feel like if we need a Renfield now, which I think we should probably take a break from this story
Yeah.
for a while, not
Yeah.
make any more. But if we need a Renfield in the next like 20 to 30 years, I think maybe call up Christian Slater.
Yeah.
I would have been down for it though. If that had been the case, that would have been like this movie would have jumped straight to the top of the list of movies I watched after Heathers. I've been down.
Well, the other most interesting Renfield was R.D. Johnson. Do y'all know who R.D. Johnson was?
I don't think
Not off the top of
No.
He
my
was a
head.
comedian on the old Laugh-In show
Yeah.
from the 60s. And they made a comedy called Love at First Bite, and he played
Yeah.
Renfield. And he did a wonderful imitation of the Renfield from the Bela Lugosi version
Mm.
as a comic send-up. And it's really hilarious. So I'm not saying the rest of the movie is all that great, but Love at First Bite,
Yeah.
R.D.
Yeah.
Johnson as Renfield, it's really funny.
We have one more movie to discuss.
Yes, and that is The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the 2018 Coen brothers directed and written and edited film. And a Western anthology, not to be confused with other titles such as The Ballad of Wallace Island. That's a recent movie. It came out a few months ago. I haven't seen it yet, but it's, as far as I'm aware, about like this raving fan of a singer who invites him to a private island to manufacture a reunion between him and his former musician partner / romantic partner. I've heard good things about it, haven't seen it yet, but not to be confused with The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
For sure. And this movie should also not be confused with The Ballad of Jack and Rose, which is a film from 2005. And it's written and directed by Rebecca Miller. And it stars her husband, Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yes.
I remember this movie came out at the video store 2005-ish. Did not see this one. I remember somebody whose opinion I really respected, a regular customer at our video store, saw it and he was like, this is pretty good. I would check this out. Didn't see it. Do not confuse it with The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Yes, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which is a Western anthology comprising 6 short stories depicting a variety of characters trying to find their way on the American frontier. The characters followed include the titular cowboy, a semi-successful bank robber, a sullen but cautiously hopeful widow crossing the country, a traveling performer and his impresario, and an eclectic mix of travelers contained in a horse-drawn carriage. But for our purposes, we'll zoom in on the 4th of these 6 chapters, All Gold Canyon, which focuses on an unnamed prospector, played by Tom Waits, as he wanders into a peaceful green valley with the hope of finding gold in the ground. Digging his shovel into a few pockets, this prospector finds gold nuggets in varying quantities and concludes that there must be a plentiful reserve of gold somewhere in this valley, and sets his sights on finding Mr. Pocket, as he personifies it. After several days and numerous attempts, the prospector digs deep enough into the right spot and succeeds in finding Mr. Pocket. But right in this moment of glory, a lone cowboy appears behind him and shoots him in the back. Believing the prospector dead, the cowboy jumps down into the pit, only to find the prospector has been playing dead. And the prospector successfully wrests the gun from the cowboy's hands and claims his revenge. Luckily, the bullet did not hit anything important.
Just guts.
Just guts.
Just guts.
And the prospector gets to see another day with the fruits of Mr. Pocket in tow.
There we go.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Very good.
Straight up.
I think that this chapter of The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, I think it reads very straightforwardly, but as we all know from watching it, a lot of things going on there. It's a testament to this point that we selected it for our conversation, that as much as it's part of an anthology, I think a lot of people consider this to be one of the standout Tom Waits film performances.
Yeah, in the films we've discussed so far, the first one, Tom Waits is very central.
Mhm.
And then in the last one, we talked about the fact that he feels central to the story and his performance feels central. but he doesn't get that much screen time. And this is another one where, because it's an anthology, he really does not have that much screen time in the grand scheme of things, although he is the main character of this story. And this is true of other film appearances like Seven Psychopaths and Licorice Pizza, which we discussed at the beginning of the cycle.
Yeah.
So why do you guys think so many notable directors have gravitated to Waits for roles that have such limited screen time?
I think that Tom Waits is, in the truest sense, a character actor.
Yeah.
A lot of association that goes with that term, whether it's him or someone else, is often that this will be someone who's in a supporting role, but with a memorable presence.
Yeah.
He brings an energy to them that has to be there and makes it more distinct. And I'm thinking in particular of Seven Psychopaths, where he's not the main character of that movie, but he is unforgettable in that role. Brief as the screen time is, I think maybe there is this appeal of less is more. The less you see him, the greater the intrigue.
I think that Tom Waits is somebody who has range, but I wouldn't say he has a whole lot of range within a scene. I feel like he's somebody who works best when he's able to dial into a frequency and kind of stay there. We were talking about other character actors, like somebody who I think started as a character actor. Two people who come to mind with somebody like Philip Seymour Hoffman or like John C. Reilly.
Yeah.
Those are guys who kind of grew out of the character actor mold. And I think were able to showcase their ability to have range within a scene. I don't feel like Tom Waits is really that guy, and that's not a knock on him. I think it's just here's this guy who's coming in to just kind of take over a scene for a couple minutes, and he's really memorable. People leave the movie being like, oh yeah, man, what a great moment. He works really well in that role. I mean, something I like about his performance in The Ballad of Buster Scruggs is I feel like Tom Waits is somebody who kind of likes his alone time. As a human being. And I feel like this is you getting to see kind of Tom Waits in his alone time, just kind of talking to himself, coming up with little expressions, Mr. Pocket. I actually thought that was one of the reasons why this worked so well. I felt like in some weird way, it was the most revealing performance of the three that we watched.
Interesting.
So you're suggesting Tom Waits is a crusty old codger.
I mean,
and I would say yes.
Guilty as charged, yes. Yeah.
He feels so authentically like an old-timey prospector. He feels like that toy prospector from Toy Story 2. Just come to life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like every role that he's played is one that he was born to play, and this is no exception.
Yeah.
Part of why I think this is an interesting choice of movie to pair with what we have discussed already is that Down by Law operates on realism with a lot of ennui. Bram Stoker's Dracula is more heightened, it's more campy. And The Ballad of Buster Scruggs in this chapter, but also as an entire movie, exists somewhere in between. And Waits' acting, it's very consistent with his other performances, as we've established. This segment is certainly a standout within the movie, too. Maybe we've said a little bit about how this stands out in his career, but even within the bounds of this movie, what do you think it is that makes this appearance as the prospector such a standout chapter?
For me, the thing that I like about this chapter is that I find the most uplifting of all of them.
Yeah.
It's the only one that doesn't end with your central character dying.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And I like that they chose.
Good guy wins.
Yeah, I like that they chose the one with kind of a scraggly old man to be the one to make it out alive. Whereas you see people like James Franco meeting their end before their time.
We'll never underestimate us scraggly old men.
Exactly.
We're survivors.
I agree on that front. I think watching it, there was this part of me that was like, no, this can't be how this moment ends. And then when he turns around and flips it on the kid who's following him.
It's really like a stand up and
it
cheer
really
kind
is.
of moment.
More so than I have felt in watching a lot of things. I was like, oh man, yes, get him.
That is one tough old bastard because I have timed how long he takes the bullet. He lays there for over 2 minutes. I think it's 2 minutes and 27 seconds.
Wow.
And I think it ties into the owl. Remember the owl?
Yeah.
How he goes up to steal the owl's eggs?
Right.
And there are 4 eggs.
He's like, well, maybe
and
he can't
sees
count
the
that
owl
much.
watching him. And he says, well, how can an owl count? And he leaves 3, takes 1. I think that's why the prospector survived. Because if you watch the scene after he's been shot and he's laying there, and I guess holding his breath, After about a minute and close to 2 minutes, you hear an owl hoot, and the outlaw turns and looks towards the owl.
Ooh.
That would be the time for
Ah.
Tom to get ready to strike.
That's such
The
a
outlaw
good
then looks
read.
back. He climbs down to move the dead body. The dead body jumps up. It's not a dead body, wrestles him for the gun, shoots him through the hand and the face, saves his own life.
Yeah.
I love this
So,
reading,
Yeah.
Richard. Yeah.
Well, that's
A,
brilliant.
Such a good
A plus
Brilliant.
work there. I love that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's not lost on the Coen brothers in writing this character that, this is a guy who is, I mean, the word that's coming to mind is a polluter. Not maybe
Yeah.
not in the most literal sense as we understand it today, but that, the whole scene begins with, all of these animals living their lives in this happy green valley. And, there's a deer, there's fish in the water, there are butterflies, and they all flee when they hear this man showing up, who doesn't seem like, he is and like a particularly offensive presence, but it's the presence of man that, they know that they're in trouble when he's there.
Well, he's there to plunder the earth.
To plunder, that's a great
Yeah.
word for it. And yeah, it's, all things considered, he feels like relatively a good guy, but he is still a plunderer.
He does say thank you, however,
Yeah.
when he leaves.
As opposed to
There's at least
to
that.
God, to whatever God he believes in.
I like that.
Yeah.
But I also think, like, this whole story, I mean, it's a great encapsulation, a great microcosm of the varied sensibilities of the Coen brothers that are shown in the greater arc of this movie, but also throughout their career, where, like, you have, when all of those animals are effectively frolicking in the meadow at the beginning, it almost feels like, a cartoonish tone, maybe like something out of like Oh Brother Where Art Thou or Raising Arizona. But then, once the prospector finally discovers Mr. Pocket, and then you see that little shadow appear that clues him into that there's a guy behind him ready to shoot. It feels more like No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
The tone changes drastically, and then there's, it just lingers there for those 2 minutes that you pointed out, Richard. And that actually made me think a bit of Down by Law because of the sense of dragging out a moment.
Yeah.
Had you?
They should have called it No Country for Young Men because the old man wins over the young man.
Yeah.
Good
Good
Nice.
point.
Love it.
Yeah.
Richard, was this your first time seeing the Ballad of Buster Scruggs?
No, I'd seen it maybe twice before, and I don't think I watched it only because Waits was in it. Because
You guys
the
like
guy
the
from Oh Brother Where
Coens.
Art Thou, who plays Buster Scruggs,
Yeah,
is
Tim
in
Blake
it. I think
Nelson,
it's
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
I just love the whole movie. The one about the impresario is a bit disturbing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The man,
Yeah.
performer with no arms. That
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
that one
Yeah.
bothers me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think
But,
that's the
but it's
goal,
well done.
and I think it's very effective.
That one reminded me a little bit of Inside Llewellyn Davis.
I can see that. Yeah.
There's something about the
Okay,
kind of
yeah.
bleakness of
Of
the road
being a
trip and the performer.
Yeah.
And there's also something about like the John Goodman character in that movie.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Like something about just like there being this like darkness that undergirds like that type of transient life.
Yeah.
That jumped out to me, but
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
very upsetting. Harry Melling, who plays like the artist, and that one, I was like, that guy looks so familiar. And I did not realize who it was until I looked it up after, and that it's the guy that plays Dudley Dursley in the Harry Potter movie.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Branching out a little bit.
I had that same moment when I first saw the movie, and he's had some interesting casting since this movie. Like he was in The Queen's Gambit.
Yeah.
He was in Joel Coen's solo feature, The Tragedy of Macbeth, as well. I thought he was great in that movie too.
Talking about other chapters, I like the James Franco one
Yeah.
about the bank robbery because I love the clerk
Oh.
who
Stephen
basically
Root.
dressed himself like a potbelly stove
I
Yeah.
love that.
Pan
so that
shot.
the guy can't shoot him.
Yep.
And that guy was in Oh Brother Where Art Thou. He played the DJ,
Oh,
the blind DJ who recorded them.
connection there.
Yeah.
He's in Oh Brother Where Art Thou.
I love that one too because the Coens have this like incredible way of making really simple things feel really upsetting.
Yeah.
The way that the horse is just slowly inching towards grass.
Yeah.
And slowly pulling on the guys on the noose, to me is like such a Coen brothers move.
Totally.
To capture this thing where you'd be like, seems super innocuous, but like it's a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
I also like when the James Franco character turns to when he's finally going to be hung, he turns to the man next to him who's bawling and crying and says, "Oh, is this your first time?"
Yeah.
It's not that bad. I've done it before.
Which is a big
I
meme
found that really-
now.
Yeah.
Also, that's a very like gifable moment.
There's a scene in the Coen Brothers remake of True Grit that reminds me of a lot, and also, that actor who plays the pan shot guy, Stephen Root, just one of the greatest character actors.
That's Stephen Root?
Yeah, that's Stephen Root.
I did
missed
not
that.
realize while watching it that it was Stephen Root. And even though I saw Stephen Root's name in the opening credits, and I was like, I wonder when Stephen Root will show up. And I did not recognize him at all.
Speaking of great character actors.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
And then, to the title character, Buster Scruggs himself, I just have to say, I love Tim Blake Nelson's singing voice.
Yeah.
Really underrated singer.
Oh, big time.
Yeah. That's definitely the most, maybe with some debate, cartoonish episode of this whole anthology.
Yeah, it feels like Looney Tunes, but in like the best way.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Tim Blake Nelson is, speaking of great character actors, such a great fit there.
Yeah, I got to say too,
guitar playing accuracy.
Plays some good F over C's and C's over there in a little country G.
Fun fact, his Tim Blake Nelson's son taught him to play for the movie.
Yep.
Wow.
Well done.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, high marks for that.
Dougie worked on a movie that's, I think, coming out in the next year that Tim Blake Nelson was in, where he plays guitar in that as well.
Oh.
So as soon as I
right.
see Tim Blake Nelson, playing guitar as Buster Scruggs, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to kind of pay attention to the accuracy. And Dougie is like, I know that it's accurate because I saw him play guitar in real life this year.
Love it. Transferable skills.
Yeah,
He's got that now in his resume.
Yeah, and it's also fun little details that guitar that he's playing is a Recording King brand guitar.
Yeah, which is one that we have many of here at the place where we record, although none in this room that we're in at the moment.
That's a good point.
But just at the school at large. But then turning attention to one other chapter of the story, this is the 5th chapter where Zoe Kazan is the lead. There's something that it's something that her primary scene partner, the character Billy Knapp, who is played by an actor named Bill Heck, says, which I think is a great sort of thesis for the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. The quote is that uncertainty, that is appropriate for this world, only for matters of the next do we vouchsafe certainty. I believe certainty regarding that which we can see and touch, it is seldom justified, if ever. And down the ages from our remote past, what certainties survive? And yet we hurry to fashion new ones, wanting their comfort. Straight is the gate, and narrow the way, indeed. And I feel like that's, a good sort of encapsulation of a lot of what the movie is about. Isolated characters taking chances that they don't know are going to materialize into anything, but it's a good way to bring back around to the fact that, this Tom Waits prospector character, he is the one person who, albeit with a very significant piece of adversity along the way, does get what he wants and gets to go home afterward, wherever that home is.
Yeah.
Anywhere he lays his head, to put it in Waitsian terms.
I like that.
I love
great.
the way he delivered that line. I don't know if anyone else could deliver that same line. It went right through without hitting nothing important. I don't think anyone else could deliver it so well.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a corny line if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's like it's like, hey, you out there in the audience, let me explain to you what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
But he does it so perfectly, you don't take it that way. He's a crazy old prospect who talks to himself.
If he doesn't say it, then you're like, oh, well, sure, he gets away, but he's going to bleed out. It's the fact that they make him say it aloud that gives you that relief.
Yeah.
There's also one other thing that he says, when he hasn't quite found Mr. Pocket yet, that I love, which is, I'm old, but you're older.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Yeah. And, well, speaking of great quotations, too, this is not attributed specifically to that character, but throughout the film, we see all of these different chapters demarcated as chapters in a literal book on screen. And I just have to say, I want that book. I want to read the whole thing because the little excerpts that you get from
that
it
you get the very end,
are like impeccably written.
Well, this whole movie is just like wall to wall, like kind of incredibly written. Like it's beautiful.
It is.
There's like this, you had a wonderful quote there that you pulled, but like down the line, there is just like so much witty dialogue. I had asked you, Richard, at the a little earlier, if you had seen it. I think the two of you guys seen this
I had
movie?
not seen it.
You had not seen it.
I had seen this movie.
I hadn't seen it, and I remember when it came out, I was like, I should make time for this. Never did. I thought this was delightful. Actually delightful. I know that it's about some pretty dark stuff. A lot of people die. That's one of the magic tricks that the Coen brothers just can pull off time and time again.
Yeah.
That they have a way of packaging these stories in ways that go down easy and also leave you with a lot to think about. Like it's more existential, I think. And for that reason, I think approaches some of the highs that you get from movies like A Serious Man or like Fargo.
Yeah, I mean, the Coens had many years to write these stories because apparently they first approached Tim Blake Nelson about the Buster Scruggs segment in like 2002 or something, like early 2000s. They had this idea. Yeah, so it's like, 15 plus years later that they finally, give him a call and are like, hey, remember that
we got this, man.
thing I pitched you 15 years ago?
Yeah.
It's happening.
My only criticism of this movie would be it has a How the West Was Won vibe. It's the white settlers moving across the plains.
Yeah,
I do think that
the only time you see the end is when they're being shot by the guy who's trying to save the life of the woman on the wagon. But I think it's because they're doing it as kind of a throwback to the old movies of
they
the
definitely
40s
are.
and 50s.
Yeah.
Like the shot at the beginning of the Tom Waits section I have read was based on the shot at the beginning of the cowboy movie Shane, which is a classic cowboy movie. But anyway, that'd be my only criticism. Beyond that, it's just a wonderful movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it very watchable. I had a good time.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, I think we should go ahead and move on to maybe sharing some unlikely universes.
I am down for this as well.
I'll start it off. All right, at the end of the movie Down by Law, the three comrades have gone their separate ways, with Bob staying with his new Italian lover, Nicoletta, while Jack and Zack split at a crossroads. Beyond that, we do not know what happened to them. Did they keep their freedom or were they recaptured and returned to Louisiana to serve out their sentences? I don't know about Jack and Zack, but I do know about Bob. Sadly, things don't go well for Bob and Nicoletta because her old boyfriend, Johnny, a member of the mafia, comes to America and drags her back to Italy. Bob decides to forget her, but also to return to Italy to escape the Louisiana authorities, where he starts a new life as Dante, a school bus driver in Rome. Then one day, Nicoletta, who it turns out is actually named Maria, returns for him and takes him to Palermo. But this is not a lover's reunion. She has a nefarious plot because her now husband, Johnny Stachino, the mobster, looks exactly like Bob, and there's a contract out on Johnny because he has betrayed the mob. The hope is that Dante, Bob, will be mistaken for Johnny by the mob, who would then kill him instead of Johnny Stachino, Maria's husband, thereby allowing Johnny to escape. However, Maria falls in love once again with Dante, Bob. When Johnny's vengeful mob associates finally catch up with Dante, they notice a mole, which the real Johnny Stachino did not have, and they realize he is not the man they're after. Maria then sets up the real Johnny to be whacked by the mob. Dante, Bob, then returns to his old life in Rome, and we are left to wonder if Maria, Nicoletta, follows him to make a life with him. Does anyone have the slightest idea what the heck I'm talking about?
I actually do, because it's one of the only other movies of Roberto Benigni's that I know, but it's the Johnny's Ticino, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love too the
Yeah.
whole kind of like doppelganger thing. You crushed this, Richard. That's a fun movie, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm
It is. It's a
fan.
great movie.
Yeah.
It was made like 2 years after Down by Law.
Cool.
Yeah, very soon after.
While we're on the topic of that movie, may I go next?
Are we all doing this movie?
I think we are.
You can totally
Do it,
go
man.
for it.
All right. Okay. So, to go along with a different character's storyline, I'd like to propose the future of Zack. You know, the movie was released in the 1980s. We have no reason to believe it's not set then, but let's say, for argument's sake, that it's actually a period piece and maybe it's set in like the late 1960s around. And so that after Zack and Jack part ways and Zack heads out west, he realizes that it's much harder to go all the way out to Los Angeles than he thought. When he wants to evade the authorities who are still eventually searching for him and keep a reasonably low profile. So Zack doesn't quite head out to California, but he stays in the South, and he realizes that it's hard for him to escape this life of crime that he's fallen into. But rather than try to elude this life, it's more advantageous for him to kind of stay in it in a low-key way as someone's accomplice. So he bands together with a career criminal named Forrest Tucker. And let's say, we never find out Zack's last name, but let's say that it is Waller. Zack Waller is his name. And so he bands together with this career criminal named Forrest Tucker, but he thinks that there's a sense of stability to be found here because Forrest Tucker, despite the fact that he is a well-known criminal, he seems to never spend a very long time in jail and always carries a gun that he seems to never ever fire. And so after, this bout of instability as a disc jockey, Zack Waller finally finds some stability perversely in the life of crime that he did not think he was going to get roped into. Does anybody know what I'm connecting this to?
I do.
You do?
It's a Robert Redford flick.
The Old Man and the Gun.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Old Man
Okay.
and the Gun.
Which is it's directed by David Lowery. It came out the same year as Buster Scruggs, 2018. This was supposed to be, I don't think it officially is, but basically the farewell performance for Robert Redford. Good movie, underrated.
And Waits does a great scene where he tells the Christmas story when he was a kid. He said, and I think the whole thing is ad-libbed. But so
wow.
if you watch that movie, wait for the scene in the bar where he's talking about Christmas with his stepfather.
Wait for Waits.
So we briefly meet Lorette at the beginning of Down by Law, who Zack seems to be dating. Well, it turns out that Zack was even less committed to her than we saw. Her name is actually Annette. And she was just so tired of correcting him that she eventually just went with Lorette. She seems to be having a rough go of it in New Orleans. And by the sound of her accent, I doubt she's from there originally. So when she discovers that Zack has been picked up for murder the very night she kicks him out, she takes this as a sign that she needs to start fresh. Seeking out the exact opposite of the vibrant New Orleans, she moves to the small town of Mount Rose, Minnesota. Still craving a bit of excitement, she shacks up with a carny and has a daughter that they name Amber. Amber's carny dad does not stick around for very long, and Annette raises her daughter on her own. Many years later, as Amber is preparing to apply for college and seeking scholarships, she decides to enter a local teen beauty pageant. This may seem innocent, but when one contestant is killed in an explosion of farm equipment and another student at the high school dies from a supposed hunting accident, everyone is on high alert. Whoever is responsible for these murders has Annette as their next target, and the trailer where she lives with Amber soon explodes. She makes it out with only a few severe burns, and although Amber is tempted to quit the pageant, Annette convinces her to power through. So, will Amber take the crown, win the scholarship, and become the next Diane Sawyer? Or will someone intent on rigging this competition take down the contestants one by one?
I don't know what this is.
I'm stumped.
I think I know this.
Okay.
Drop Dead Gorgeous?
Yes!
Yeah!
Good job!
Okay.
I saw this movie many moons ago, and I kind of don't remember it, but then when you started describing the beauty pageant, it all kind of clicked.
Yeah.
Very cool. I like that. I forgot
you.
that her name was Annette. That's
That's
good.
I was thinking about doing this one, and then when
good.
I looked and reminded myself of her name, I was like, well, it's too close to not do.
Yeah, I love it.
Kirsten Dunst is the daughter in this.
That's right. Well, I'm going to suggest a potential alternative future for our Laurette. When we meet her, she has absolutely had it with Zack. Frustrated by what seems like his inability to hold down a job as a radio disc jockey, and angered by how she is made to feel in this relationship. Dumping belongings on the street is never a sign that things are going well between two people. There is an earnestness and desperation here that belies Laurette's actual position in life and her standing in the community, because she's actually a state district attorney there in Louisiana, and professionally goes by the name Ann Osborne. So I'm going to say Laurette's more like a nickname. I'm getting Reese Witherspoon, Joaquin Phoenix vibes and Inherent Vice here. I think she's been slumming it with Zack. And it's because music is her Achilles heel. And Zack, a DJ that she admires, she looks past quite a bit professionally when that's in play. She hits her breaking point with Zack, but it's not very long before Anne is buttered up by another gentleman caller, calling on the dulcet tones of the Neville brothers to seal the deal. This guy's name is Remy, and he's a police lieutenant trying to wrap up a New Orleans gangland murder. Remy even shows off some guitar playing skills and singing, which is, by my eye, pretty accurate, actually. This is all too much for Anne to resist, igniting a passionate and fiery romance with Remy, only to realize that it's about to complicate the case that she's been tasked to oversee. Do we know what this is?
I don't know.
It came out the exact same year as Down by Law, 1986.
Oh.
It also takes place in New Orleans.
Easy, is it?
It's the Big Easy.
Yes. It is the Big Easy.
It's the Big Easy.
Which, by the way, nobody in New Orleans calls New Orleans the Big Easy.
There we go.
They hate that. Because they say it's a hard town to live in. It ain't easy.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Big Easy. Okay.
There we go. Yeah. I just, the confluence of it was too good to pass up.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Guys, any closing remarks we want to say about Tom Waits?
As I've said, I've had kind of a lifelong appreciation of Tom Waits, adjacent to my dad's appreciation for him. And it was just really cool to finally dig into some of these movies that I hadn't seen. I'm excited to continue to see more of him. I like the fact that we started this cycle with the Tom Waits movie. We're ending this cycle digging more into Tom Waits.
Definitely.
And it's just felt like nostalgic for me, even with movies I hadn't seen before.
Agreed. And, there was some real nostalgia for me in that I had seen two of these movies before. But talking about the greater Tom Waits filmography, I think that it says so much about him that I think we could take three completely different movies of his and still have just as much of an episode out of those. But also that, his film career is still actively going on. In fact, there are 3 to-be-released films that he is a part of, one of which is the next film by Jim Jarmusch, which is called Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, which I think may have premiered at a festival already, but it hasn't been released publicly.
But it's set to come out this year.
To come out this year. I'm very excited for it. There's another film called Wildwood that he's coming, that is to be released, that he is part of, which is an adaptation of a novel by Colin Meloy, who you might know as the singer of The Decemberists. And the last one is the next film by Martin McDonagh, who previously cast him in 7 Psychopaths. This film is called Wild Horse 9, which is currently filming, according to Wikipedia. So 3 Tom Waits films to look forward to. And there's all the others that I and the rest of us have not seen to look forward to watching as well. Yeah, I can't wait.
One thing I would say is, if you haven't seen Coffee and Cigarettes, you want to watch that, because there's a great one with Iggy Pop and Tom Waits, with Iggy Pop playing Iggy Pop and Tom Waits playing Tom Waits, meeting in a bar and not getting along with each other. It is hilarious. It's absolutely wonderful.
Some Jack and Zack vibes right there.
Yeah.
I'll just say too that I was not the biggest Tom Waits fan coming into this conversation. That's not to say that I actively disliked him or his music, but I've never really done that much of a deep dive on him. I will say I've always liked him in the movies. I'm still growing, I think, as an appreciator of his music. But this has been a great conversation and super fun to dig into. And I feel like when I see him in other films, I'm going to be cued into him a little differently. I think now that we've been able to share some of the things that we've seen in these films that make him such a special performer.
Well, before we wrap up, should we talk about our next cycle?
Yeah, so our cycle of musicians turned actors is coming to a close with this episode, but worry not, we have another one on the way. And this is going to be centered on a theme that I think has come up in many prior episodes of ours, but now we're finally going to zoom in on, which I think is a very appropriate term for the theme, because these are going to be movies all about what we're calling audience interrogation. These are movies that assess the audience's relationship to what is on screen, whether that be via the theme of voyeurism, media distortion, or to use a very academic word, scopophilia. And to begin that cycle with a movie we've all seen before, this is going to be, I'm very excited for this.
He's so excited.
There are it's been a trend of ours that we will tease a movie for a while before we actually cover it, but I don't think there's been any filmmaker that has been teased quite as much as the next one we are about to cover. Listeners, we're finally covering David Lynch.
He's so
we're going to do it.
Ah.
And how are we going to begin covering him? With Blue Velvet. Emilio, you said something earlier about films that feature a Roy Orbison needle drop. We're continuing that trend with this film too.
There we go.
I saw that when it came out
Wow.
in the
wow.
theater. Scared the bejesus out of me.
Yeah.
I feel like
That's a good movie.
I feel like you're not alone. I was listening to an interview with Richard Linklater, who said something really similar. He's like, I actually responded with, like, my response to this movie was more fear than anything else.
Yeah.
So.
That was at the time that our son, Chris, was about 3 years old, which is the age of the child in the movie.
Oh my God.
Youch.
So, there's that.
I from my own personal experience, I know that too. Anytime I see, a young kid, it's so hard for me to not think about my own son and put him in place of anybody I'm seeing.
So
anyway,
we'll be talking that. Yeah. Next time you hear from us.
I'm
Dad,
so excited.
thank you so much for joining us. This has been really fun.
Thanks for having me again. It was a lot of fun.
Would you like to plug your Substack?
Yeah. I'm on Medium and Substack.
let's go. I'm so
McMongrel.
excited. You got something to plug.
Yeah, McMongrel 5710 on Substack. Although I don't write about movies, I write about politics and a lot of satire and anger. But you can, and I also do it on Medium, but everything I do on Medium, I also put on Substack because Substack's easier to get to.
Dude, Richard, always the best. Thank you so much for joining us with this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for coming back.
So in addition to this
Okay.
podcast, you can follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can contact us via email. We would love to hear from you. Write to us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. If you are on Letterboxd, you can follow me, Madeline, at Patroness of Cats. Dad, I don't think you're active, but you do have a Letterboxd, which is also at McMongrel.
And you can also follow me, Julian, on Letterboxd at Julian_Barthold. If you're listening to us for the first time, thank you for finding us. Or if this is the 5th, 6th, or 60th time you've listened to us, thanks for sticking with us. We've really grown to love doing this, and it means the world to have our budding listenership grow.
And if you haven't already, we'd ask you, return listener, to please write a positive review and rate us on your podcast platform of choice. This is one of the best ways for new listeners to find us and help our podcast take its next steps. You can also keep it grassroots. You can tell a friend to tell another friend to tell all of their cinephile friends that the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast is worth it and really fun to listen to. That also helps.
Oh, God bless you and keep you, Mother McCree.